I can confidently say that Zoids Chaotic Century is my favourite anime of all time, and that'll never change. The reason that it'll never change is because I know it's not the best anime of all time. It has its flaws, and compared to some anime that are held in such high regard, such as Code Geass, Death Note, Cowboy Bebop, Evangelion, Full Metal Alchemist, and as of late, Attack on Titan has been so phenomenal. It's literally caved its own little section in my brain, and I absolutely cannot wait for Season 4 to come out. But compared to absolute giants like these, my favourite anime will never be able to compete. And I know that, but does that make it bad? Of course not. Zoids Chaotic Century is an absolutely amazing anime in its own right, and I am here today to tell you just what made it so damn good. So I just quickly wanted to say thank you all so much for 1,000 subscribers. It might not seem like much, but I feel like I've got my own little community here. And I know a lot of you come here for different things, whether it be Zoids, whether it be Tokyo Ghoul, whether it be Fire Emblem. Trust me, I'll definitely be doing more videos on all of those topics, as well as many other things like my most recent Beyblade video. But one thing that'll be coherent throughout my whole channel is, of course, myself, as well as everything in the channel somewhat relating back to anime. And of course, sometimes games if I'm feeling it. For example, I've recently picked up Ghost of Tsushima, and it has been really amazing so far, and I definitely want to make a video on that in the coming future, if any of you would be interested. And as you might already know, I have Fire Emblem Awakening and Echoes to still play through that I also want to make videos on in the future, so stay tuned for that too. I've got a massive list of video ideas all just scattered through my phone, and eventually I'll get to all of them. So if any of this sounds like something you'd be interested in and don't want to miss out on, definitely hit that subscribe button below. Let's see if we can hit 2,000 by the end of the year. A little bit ambitious, but hey, gotta aim a bit high. Because I mean, my original goal for this year was 1,000 subscribers, and it's only August, my birthday just passed, and we've already smashed that, so here we are. Also, don't forget to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, it really helps out the channel a lot. And leave a comment down below of your thoughts, what you think, anything. I'm more than happy to reply to all of your guys' comments, whether it be related to this video and Zoids or anything else. So I'm gonna break this video down to 3 segments, those being the story, the characters, and the Zoids themselves. So just a quick warning here as well, this video will of course contain spoilers for Zoids Chaotic Century, so if you don't want to get spoiled, tread with caution. I'll try and put some spoiler warnings here and there, but it's explaining how our series is so good, it's going to be filled with spoilers. Starting with the story. First, I'll give you a quick synopsis. Then, I'll go a bit more in depth on it. Zoids Chaotic Century is set during a war period on planet Z, a very far away planet from Earth where mechanical life forms known as Zoids exist. The start of the series is during a bit of a ceasefire between the two main powers, that being the Guylos Empire and the Helic Republic. Throughout the first half of Chaotic Century, we follow our protagonist, Van Flyheight, who, through a series of unfortunate events in his hometown being chased by bandits, ends up finding a girl named Fiona trapped in a giant test tube in some ancient ruins, along with the Organoid, which he names Zeke. Fiona has amnesia, and all she can remember is something called Zoid Eve. So Van takes it upon himself to help her find out what that Zoid Eve is, and hopefully in turn get Fiona's memory back. This is also a great excuse for Van to leave his small village, which he's been wanting to do for quite some time, and take his newfound Zoid, the Shield Liger, on a journey around the world. He eventually develops a little gang of sorts, consisting of the mercenary Irvine, as well as the transporter slash arms dealer Moonbay. This little gang end up getting caught up in the ongoing war multiple occasions, generally finding themselves on the Republic side of things, but occasionally finding themselves on the Imperial side of things, those being with Prince Rudolph and an Imperial soldier at one stage. This really goes to show that there isn't a good or bad side of the war, although it somewhat alludes to the Empire being the quote-unquote bad guys at the beginning of the story. A good way to sum it up through a comment on one of my older videos is that Chaotic Century has a very nuanced and non-preachy take on why war is bad, how it negatively impacts people, and representing people in both factions. 2 fantastic episodes that relate to this concept and the Imperial soldier I referenced earlier are episodes 16 and 27. In episode 16, New Helic City, Van helps an Imperial soldier who's an escaped prisoner escape a mob that are just trying to give him hell. These guys aren't even soldiers, they're just bitter civilians, using someone they deem as their enemy as an outlet to express their anger, even saying they'd rather beat him up than call the military to arrest him, and even try to justify their actions by saying they can do whatever they want in times of war. Van helped this guy because he considered it to be the right thing to do, especially considering the fight was 5 against 1, and at the end of the day, it's not like Van has really taken any sides in this war. The guy ends up dropping and leaving behind a photo of him and his mother. Van comments to Irvine on the reason he helped the guy is because at the end of the day, he's just another person like anyone else, who probably just wants to go back home and see his family. Later on, however, this Imperial soldier ends up stealing a heavily armored command wolf and wreaks havoc on New Helic City. Van makes it his personal mission to chase down and stop the guy, as he feels as though he's responsible for this. However, even after stopping him, chasing him down, and pinning him to the ground, Van just can't even bring himself to hit the guy. He just starts to cry and ends up letting him go. Dr. D then just ends up spitting some straight facts that just kind of hit hard, you know? He tells Van not to blame himself and that it doesn't matter whether you're from the Republic or the Empire. A life is a life, and you did the right thing trying to save his. War is no good for anybody. In episode 27, Van, Irvine, and Rudolph end up getting captured in an Imperial outpost. Coincidentally, our soldier from episode 16 happens to be there to return the favor, and ends up freeing them from their cell, becoming a traitor to the Empire. We end up hearing that his mother from the photo in episode 16 unfortunately passed away before he got to see her again. We also learned his name's Rokai from his dog tags, further humanizing him a little bit more. Van offers for him to come along with them, but he expresses that at this point, he just doesn't want to fight anymore. He ends up acting as a decoy for Van, Rudolph, and Irvine to escape. He's never seen again after that point, and really, we don't know what happened to him. But just a little side story like that, and even a callback to an earlier episode, is just a little detail that I never expected. And in meeting this soldier of the Empire, it allows Rudolph as a person to really grow as well, learning that there are plenty of different types of people within his empire that he never really thought about before, back when he was the prince in his palace. Anyway, nuanced story tangent aside, after the events of the first half of the series where Van beats the main antagonist Prozen and peace is kind of restored, we get the second season, Guardian Force. This is where the Empire and Republic join forces to create a task force, with its main purpose being to maintain the peace. This second part of the story takes place roughly around after a 2-year time script from the first part of the story. Van is now, of course, older, slightly more mature, and has been training his ass off to become the best possible Zoid pilot he can be. In this time, he parted ways with Irvine, Moonbay, and even Fiona, but in time, within Guardian Force, they do eventually reunite. Guardian Force is essentially where the series really kicks into overdrive, and we get to learn a lot more lore regarding Fiona and the past of Planet Z, as well as uncover a lot of mysteries behind Organoids and Raven, and some other new very important characters like Hiltz and Reese. A lot of new small factions pop up, and with Raven back, it brings a lot of trouble for Van and the Guardian Force. All in all, a lot of these factions popping up and these disruptions to the peace are all caused by our main antagonist of Guardian Force pulling the strings, that being Hiltz. He's mainly just in the background for a lot of the series and doesn't actually come to the forefront until around episode 57. And when he does come to the forefront, boy does he ever make an entrance. He ends up becoming a threat to the entire world and just wreaks havoc for the fun of it, until his eventual defeat at the end of the series where literally everyone turns against him. So essentially, the overarching plot of Guardian Force is still fighting the Zoid Eve and basically trying to manage all these threats that keep popping up, including people like Raven and Reese, as well as all these other little factions. Anyway, I've already seemed to spill a bit into the characters, so here we go, second part. The characters. Man, does Zoids Chaotic Century ever have some amazing characters. It even holds my favourite anime character of all time, Raven, but we'll get to him later. To start off, we'll talk about Van and his crew, that consisting of himself, Fiona, Moonbay, and Irvine. And then in Guardian Force, we add Thomas to the mix as well. As we've established already, Van's just a kid thrown into a war that has a lot of growing up to do. And he does grow. A lot. He goes from just some kid in a desert village to the guy that saved the world by defeating the Death Soarer and later defeating the Death Soarer again, but the real one this time. I really enjoy Van as a protagonist. He's pretty lighthearted but serious when he needs to be and shows genuine emotion and growth throughout the series, as seen in the aspects I talked about earlier in the video. All in all, fun character, has good intentions, can't complain a bit. Fiona, on the other hand, I'm kind of iffy about. I've never really liked her that much as a character, and it really just felt like she was pushed to the side a lot. But I do really enjoy her backstory and learning a lot more about where she came from and the significance of ancient Zoidians and the Zoid Eve. She has her moments and is a good compliment to Van, but in my opinion, she never really stood out too much in her own right. Besides, when she strapped dynamite to Zeke. brilliant idea. Irvine and Moonbay basically become the mum and dad of the group, but are definitely great characters in their own right. Moonbay is basically their navigator and is fantastic at gathering information for them to go off. She was an arms dealer after all. She has a lot of contacts throughout the military. She really grows a lot in Guardian Force too, as she always seems to find herself in the background, not doing a lot. However, since returning to the gang, she really wants to actually try and make a difference, and literally saves Van's life by sacrificing her precious Gustav. Later in the series, she happens to be the one person who is capable of piloting the absolute behemoth that is the Ultrasaurus, which is pretty damn crazy. Irvine was always a bit of a badass. He's a mercenary, not just for the money, but to also help people in need. Sometimes. He's first introduced early on, helping Van rescue Fiona out of quicksand. However, after seeing Zeke, his priorities quickly change. He becomes the antagonist for the episode, only to eventually come around when Moonbay comes along, who he seems to know from prior and have a bit of history with. After that pretty much forms a little group that we follow around for the rest of the series. In Guardian Force, we meet Thomas, who pretty much just becomes the brains of the group, being heavily invested in strategy and tactics and the AI that he developed. He's an alright character and at times felt like a bit of a comic relief, but I do like the way he played off his older brother Carl Schuboltz and had to overcome living in his shadow. It also kinda doesn't help my liking of him when he pilots the D-Bison. I mean, it's kinda cool I guess, but definitely not one of my favorite Zoids. Might as well mention Rob Herman and Carl Schuboltz here as well. They essentially play a very similar leadership role within their respective factions, that being the Empire and Republic, and eventually put their differences aside to fight alongside against Prozin, as well as many others like Hiltz and Raven while a part of the Guardian Force. Prozin is the main antagonist of the first season. He's a power-hungry guy who essentially just wants control over the whole world. He's conniving and he's manipulative. He goes so far as to fake Prince Rudolph's death to gain the throne. After faking this death, of course, he sends real assassins as well as Raven to try and actually kill him too, as he fully does intend for Prince Rudolph to be dead. Rudolph is the Crown Prince of the Empire. He's a young kid and a fun character we see join the group throughout the later half of the first season, and he becomes a really good insight into the world of the Empire. He's also a great contrast to Van, who's generally pretty impulsive and hot-headed, whereas Rudolph is more respectful. We see their ideologies clash a few times here and there, but they both learn valuable lessons from each other and grow as characters for the better. I've already talked about Hiltz before, so now I'll mention Reese. She's a bit of a mixed bag of a character. It's hard to really tell what she wants besides what seems like just chaos, or just to manipulate and toy around with people. She has psychic powers, so really she can mess around with people quite a lot. Although, her character changes quite a lot in the later half of Guardian Force. After overcoming the death of her good friend Nico, being saved by Van and betrayed by Hiltz, she chooses to side with Raven and truly does care for him, even trying to help him deal with his own past trauma. Now, for Raven. I won't go too in depth with him because I do plan on doing a whole video about Raven sometime in the future, but essentially he's introduced as a polar opposite to Van. Where Van loves Zoids and has a good bond with Zeke and his shield Liger, Raven absolutely hates Zoids and simply uses them as if they're a tool for destruction. We see this in the brutal tactics he takes when fighting. One specific fight being on Mount Osa where he rips his Saber Tiger apart trying to defeat Van. In general, Raven is proven to be a much more skilled pilot than Van is, and he does win a majority of the fights they have, and sometimes without even the assistance of his Organoid shadow. In Guardian Force, Van was never actually able to beat Raven, not in his Genosaur or his Geno Breaker, and if Hiltz hadn't stepped in, Raven probably would have won that last battle. But to be fair, Van did have him on the rope, so it probably could have gone either way, but I'm still leaning a bit towards Raven. Raven also has a lot of character development throughout the series, really just trying to find himself almost and not knowing what he's even fighting for at times. And in the end, helps Van take down Hiltz and even comments that Van is the only pilot that he truly respects. There's so much more to say about Raven, including his backstory and other stuff like that. I could talk about him forever like some obsessed fangirl, but let's continue. Lastly, we have the Zoids themselves. The design of the Zoids in Chaotic Century are pretty raw and rough around the edges, which really does suit the war period aesthetic. Chaotic Century featured powerhouses like the Guylos, who really made a massive impact when it was first revealed. We saw badass moments from awesome Zoids like the legendary guard Zaberfangs, the Blade Liger of course, the Royal Saber, the Geno Breaker, the Psycho Genosaur. Even when the base Genosaur was first seen in Season 1 of Chaotic Century, it made such a big impact and was a huge power jump from what we've seen in the whole series up until that point. Not to mention, of course, the Death Sora and Death Stinger, which were mutually insane. Even foot soldier Zoids like the Guylos were pretty cool and had some awesome representation when piloted by Raven, of course. And the Guylos was cool to see when being destroyed by Raven. And I mean, even things like Irvine's Command Wolf with his custom paint job was awesome. And the Lightning Sykes is pretty damn cool as well. In general, it's easy to say Chaotic Century had some amazing Zoid designs. And I could go on about how cool they are all day. There's a reason I have so many of their HMM kits. The aesthetic and details of these machines are just amazing. So I hope me basically hyping up Chaotic Century was fun to watch, because it was definitely fun to script, and I know it'll be fun to edit while rewatching a bunch of episodes and scenes from Chaotic Century. If for any reason you haven't seen Zoids Chaotic Century, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I'll try and chuck a link in the description to some place where you can hopefully watch it. If when you're watching this the link isn't there or the link doesn't work, sorry. Hopefully you can find a way to watch it on some other site. Or hopefully Netflix or something will pick it up someday. I mean, they recently picked up Zoids Wild, and I couldn't tell you why, but who knows, maybe we'll get more series in the future. So that's what made Zoids Chaotic Century so damn good. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button and leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to reply to all you guys' comments, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.